So let's have a look at what we're going to discuss today in detail. So we're going to look first and foremost at the key takeaways from Q2, what we deem as the most important stuff that we want to talk about today. We're going to look a little bit at the industry and the outlook. We're going to look at the growth areas individually. We're going to look at talent, such as what do the candidates want at the moment, and what are some of their habits, and then we'll sum it all up at the end. So yeah, let's dive straight in, shall we? So key takeaways from Q2 in that case is a good place to start. I mean, I don't know about you, Vince, but I started to see some green shoots, particularly when it comes to things like jobs posted. We're 200% up on single job postings on FarmyWeb based on this quarter alone from last quarter. That's got to mean something, right?
Yeah, so I think we're really going to start to see a pickup around September time, but I don't think it's going to be the massive influx of new business that we're expecting. I think what we're going
Mm,
to do is we're going to run through to probably Q1 next year. It will start to pick up. I work quite closely with Deloitte and KPMG, looking at what their views are, and we're really looking at the market levels going back to how we like them to be around about Q2 in 2027. So
mm.
it's picking up. But unfortunately, with the way that the world is at the moment, it's still a little bit iffy, should we say the very least.
Yeah, I mean that's putting it politely, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
think so.
One thing I have noticed, particularly in this quarter, is there's a real split narrative around contract roles. You hear a lot anecdotally that people are relying more on contractors now, more so than before, because it saves them money on things like headcount, pensions, all of those kind of extra expenses. But from what I can see in terms of what's actually going on, distinctly less contract roles than I've ever seen before. What's your experience?
Yeah, the growth did go up to around about 5% more than we would normally see. Just talking to one of the big CROs, and that's now gone back down again. So it's
Mm,
people really think about what they're doing on this, and some of the costs you don't always save. It's not always the best thing to do, but it is a short-term fix, so that's not difficult.
absolutely. If you listen to the news, you'll know that there's a really, really hard time going on for anyone in entry level or graduate roles. They're just unable to get on the ladder, as it were. It's a real problem. So yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing much in terms of entry level stuff at all. Whether that's incentives or schemes, people aren't talking about them as much as they used to. And finally, the key emphasis across all of this is employer branding and strategic hiring has got to be the priority, hasn't it?
Yeah, so again, September's the time when most people are thinking of revamping what they've got or coming up with some new messaging specifically to take us through to the end of the year. And then I think what we'll see is a revamp of all of that for early next year as well, probably February, March time. So any of you that are thinking about doing your employer branding or thinking about your EVP, think about the messaging, and we're going to sort of look at some of the key things that candidates are looking for a little bit later on.
Absolutely. A little bit of an outlook on the life sciences industry then. One of the things that we've noticed is investment's really uneven across the sector. Ironically, obesity is the only area that seems to be getting any bigger in a real defined way. How about you, Vince? What are you seeing from that point of view?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, the a lot of the investors that I'm talking to are doing short-term investment. They're very nervous about doing anything long-term unless it's property or secured. So I think we're going to continue with this with the current world climate.
Mm,
The economy is not very good, and with wars and everything else,
mm.
investors are quite selective about what they actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nice bits of news that we are seeing is that the sector is set to grow, well over 100%. So currently at about 3.4 billion. By 2033, we're looking to be 8.15 billion. So this is a really positive
Yeah,
bit of news because it has been a rubbish couple of years, frankly, hasn't it? So it's nice to see that actually it's leading towards something, as it were.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Despite it being a relatively bad year, executive confidence is well up. 75% of all C-suite people are suggesting that everything's okay and they're optimistic about the next couple of months. So that again is
Mm,
a really, really positive bit of news. When
yeah.
it comes to clinical trials, particularly, China has really, really stepped up in the game. They're now kind of leading on a global level. The most sites, the most people doing things that I've seen in a very long time, and it's all happening in
Mm.
China. They're coming for European and US talent in a really big way at the moment. So it's really interesting to see how they're doing that as well.
Yep.
And then obviously offshoring. We spoke about this at length, haven't we, with a few of our clients. Did you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been tracking is really the costs of offshoring and where that's actually going. And I think the big one was looking at India, that's really
Mm,
creeping up now. So it's not as good as it was. Eastern Europe's still pretty good, depending on where you are. But I think offshoring it used to be good. It used to be the right thing to do. Most people have got a platform or a site.
mm,
Or certainly some sort of company in India, especially because it's very cheap there. But I mean, some of the latest figures we've had on just data management people, stats people, the costs are really creeping up. It's,
mm.
nearly 75% of what you'd normally get. So if you are thinking about offshoring, really have a think about where you're going to do that. And again, the costs are not as good as they were. Everyone thinks it is, but
Mm.
in reality, it's not so clever. Okay.
No, absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next bit. Let's look at pharma specifically. We touched on obesity a minute ago. It is the fastest growing area across pharma, across biotech. It's set to hit 150 billion in global sales by 2035. This is obviously helped again by India. The uptake on GLP-1 drugs over there has been absolutely astronomical, with a rising population and with a bit of an obesity crisis in India at the moment. This is a really key time for anyone in the obesity game. And India is such a massive market. I'm fully expecting them to hit that target of 150 billion in the next 10 years. As we know, AI is being utilized really, really well. It's speeding up development at the same time as cutting costs, which means, essentially people are able to do more for less. And that is every farmer owner's dream, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
um, just jumping on very quickly to mergers and acquisitions. I mean,
Yes.
we're seeing that's very strong at the moment. That's because of the market. That's because of the economy.
Mm.
I think we might see some real big mergers coming up, especially towards the end of the year. Again, because everyone's been suffering a little bit. The pricing is down. People
Yes.
aren't doing as well as they are, so it makes it a little bit easier to pick them up. So keep an eye on things. There might be a few surprises there. Some of the management consultancies are looking at a number of specific companies that they think will actually merge very,
Mm.
very soon, i.e., probably in Q3. So we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting headlines for sure. We've seen
Mm.
so many mergers and acquisitions this year alone, 105 billion in deals as of this week, which is huge amounts of money. But as you say, it's a really good time to buy a company right now. They
Yeah,
are they are mostly across the board down, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
yeah, yeah.
One of the key areas for pharma as well is green chemistry. There's been a whole load of events lately, such as the Pharma Sustainability Days, PharmApp, the ISPE, where what they can do to be greener has been very much top of the agenda.
Mm.
So it's a real growing area, particularly in manufacturing. What can they do to be more conscious of the environment and the planet that we live on? It's a relatively positive time, actually, to be honest, because it's normally one of the first things you'd expect people to cut when sales are down is the nice to haves, but they seem to be taking this really seriously.
Yeah, and also a lot of the biotechs that I'm talking to are going over to purely CDMO manufacturing as well. So they're
Mm.
actually offsetting some of their products or diversifying the business to just really focus on manufacturing. So I think there's a bit of a change coming. We'll have to see how that falls out.
Absolutely. Looking at medtech specifically, then, pretty much the same as last quarter, to be honest. The growth is mainly across digital health diagnostics and wearable tech. There's been a significant increase in investment, though, 28% up based on this time last year, which is huge amounts of money considering the billions that were being pumped in before. 28% more means we're able to get more stuff done. The key areas at the moment: robotic assisted surgery, faster recovery times, improved patient outcomes, decreased risk. There is really, nothing to whinge about in the medtech space. And human digital twins, significant process is being made there at the moment. Process progress, apologies. It's a really, really fascinating time to be in medtech.
Okay, that's good.
Looking at clinical research, decentralized trials being enabled by AI and tech, it means that the uptake from patients is so much higher than it used to be. And this is due to increased flexibility in the same way that people like going to work with a more flexible package. Patients like coming onto trials where it's more flexible, when the demand to come into a site isn't there every day, when you can send from your wearable tech, it makes people uptake a lot easier. Speaking to a lot of CROs at the moment, they're expecting really modest growth in 2025, but 2026, they're hoping it's going to be a lot busier than it is now. And then finally, one of the things I wanted to touch on is stock prices across CRO. It's everyone pretty much is down on last year. The average being around the 20-25% mark. So it's a really tedious looking time for CR at the moment, isn't it, Vince?
Yeah, some of them are a lot worse as well. So again, this is something like keeping an eye on every single day, really, just sort of
Mm,
seeing where people are, the ups and downs. I think all of them will bounce back. It's just what happens before that bounce back comes that is going to be interesting, but we'll see.
absolutely. It's a good time to buy a CRO. Global talent landscape, then. Let's have a little look at this. So, talking about the US particularly, one of the biggest bits of feedback coming out of there is that candidates are lacking the digital literacy they need for the roles that they have. Being one of the big centers of tech worldwide, you need really candidates that can speak the language, manage data, use AI. They just don't have the skills over there. So, they're trying to bring them in from a global level. In Europe, we've had the Choose Europe for Science scheme that launched back in June, which is really, really positive. Basically, they're pumping in more funding to research, to networks, to education, to make talent from around the world come and choose Europe to practice, which is great because, as we've touched on, it's got to compete with the US, it's got to compete with China. So this is kind of how they're looking at doing that. From the UK's perspective, one of the things that we've noticed, which is really, really sad actually, is our political situation has made us quite unattractive to top talent from a global level. A lot of people do still have the desire to work in the UK because we've got this reputation of being a decent place. But unfortunately, a lot of sensationalist news headlines are putting us in a really bad spotlight, and it is turning off particularly Asian talent from coming to the UK, which is a real shame because they've got excellent education out there, they've got excellent scientists, and we do need them. It does make life a lot more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at Latin America, they've got Laboratoria there, which is a scheme basically which is bringing in women into the life sciences industry. They're a little bit behind in terms of that. Um, so yeah, it's a really interesting time because they're upskilling, they're reskilling women and bringing them into life sciences instead of relying on external talent from other countries, which I think is really, really cool. It's good to see. You wanted to touch on Latin America as well, didn't you, Vince?
Yeah, well, we've been watching LATAM for quite some time now, and it's a little bit volatile now. So Mexico and Colombia were going to be the real two hotspots, but it's all cooling, and it's not as good as it was. So I think anyone who's thinking of moving over to LATAM now needs to really think about where they're going to land and expand and what they're going to be doing. Same thing for Africa. Africa's become a lot more volatile now as well because of the world, and South Africa's still okay, but it's still got all the usual issues that you'd normally have.
Mm,
America seems to be quite flat, and I think again this goes back to a lot of companies now thinking about soft skills as well as digital literacy.
yeah.
Um, People don't have the skills that we expect everyone to have, so there's a lot of upskilling going on internally with companies at the moment, thinking about what do people really need, what have we identified, and then sort of going from there really. So
Yeah,
that's it.
really interesting time. And then finally, candidate fraud. This is something we speak at length, particularly in the clinical research world. It's incredibly high at the moment. We thought it was bad last year. This year's worse.
Yeah, it's creeping up. It's not very good. I mean, I think any company that doesn't have very rigid candidate background checks is going to find themselves in trouble very, very soon. We've got some
Mm,
data on this in a minute, but fraud is very high, and it's organised crime as well as individuals. The biggest one I've seen as a growth area in the last sort of 6 months has been double jobbing.
mm,
There's a lot of double jobbing going out there because people working from home, not being managed properly, not being having their work reviewed, and that's causing a problem. And I think it's at all levels as well, really
mm.
senior people right the way down to junior people. So be aware of double jobbing. It's a big issue.
Sure is. So, looking at what candidates want, then, Vince has touched on that this should have been in number order, and now every time I see it, I really wish I'd done it. So, 80% of all people in work at the moment are looking to change job by the end of this year. I'm used to pretty high numbers. I'm used to a large percentage, but to me, that is absolutely crazy. I can't picture being on the job market myself at this particular economic time. So the fact that 80% of people are looking to do it, it blows my mind. Looking at priorities and what people want, 68% of candidates are saying that money is the top priority for them. A lot of people, wages have kind of stagnated. They haven't had a pay rise in a few years, couple of years, and that's taken its toll. With the rising cost of living across the world, some people do just need a bigger paycheck, and that's the only thing that's driving them away. 65% of people want clearer progression. They want to know what they're going to be doing in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, what the end game is, what their job title could be, and they want that laid out in front of them. 67% of people are just after flexible work arrangements. They just want to be able to drop the kids off to school in the morning, pick them up at the end of the day, and it not be a problem. They just want flexibility in their work. They want to be able to work and have fun and have life all at the same time. 60% of candidates on the market really value a cultural and purpose alignment with the companies they apply to. So if in your employer branding, you're not talking about your values, what it is you want to do, what the changes that you want to make, you're missing a trick because people really resonate with this. 70% of candidates are really seeking upskilling and reskilling. We're moving into a way more digital age than we've ever had. Not a lot of people are actually training these skills internally. People want to know more about data, about AI, and how they can harness it and use it and be good at it. The opportunities just aren't there across the board for a lot of people to train in this way. And finally, interestingly, 58% of job seekers actually evaluate branding and reputation when they're looking at applying, which is higher than I've seen the number before. So candidates are really switched on to the things that you're saying, the things that you're doing, and what people are saying about you. That's a really, really high figure. And then finally, we don't see so much about DE&I these days. It is really important to candidates still. They do really, really care about working somewhere where, DE&I as a thing is embraced, and transparency as well. They want transparency from the top of the chain. The leaders, they want to know what's going on. They want to be treated with a modicum of dignity that we're not used to seeing in a corporate world. Any reflections on that, Vince?
Yeah, well, DNI has obviously been hit by certain comments in political
Yes.
areas, shall we say. I'm not going to go too deeply into
Yeah,
that, but I
don't.
think the big one for everyone to be aware of is most people would move between 2.6 and 2.8 years when they're with an organization. Most people have actually been there much longer than that now because of everything that's going on. So they're all looking, they're all thinking about that next move. Is it the right thing for me to do? So I think there's a lot of companies out there that are really on this, and what they're doing is they're offering those flexible work arrangements. They're doing the upskilling and reskilling to actually make people more interested, and they can move in different parts of the organization. Clear progression planning is an absolute must. There's a number of companies I'm working with at the moment on putting these progression plans together, and what does that actually look like? What are the milestones that people need to hit so that they understand where they're going? And it might be not a lateral change, it might be a change that's slightly different. They move into a different area that they hadn't considered because they've got the skills to do that. So I think more personalized plans for people is what we're going to see, which is very difficult if you're running a large company.
Yeah.
But again, this is something that needs to feed down from management more than anything else. Okay,
Yeah,
let's move on.
certainly is. Candidate habits, a little bit about what people are doing and what the implications of that are to us as recruitment professionals. So 67% of all job seekers on the market at the moment are admitting to deliberately manipulating recruitment technology. By this, I mean they're doing things like keyword stuffing for the ATS. They're putting all the keywords from the job ad in their CV, coloring it white so you can't see it. They're trying to get around our ATS systems. They're trying to use AI. We've all heard and seen candidates using ChatGPT in the corner while they're on an interview to give them decent interview answers. It is a huge uptake of people doing this, and there's no end seemingly in sight. I do see some things about recruitment technology being able to track what people are doing, but I just don't know how we get around this issue. 17% of hiring managers have already had an encounter with candidates using deepfake technology as well. which is alarmingly high. This is something that we thought was relatively in its infancy, but just the advances in technology are so dramatic and so profound that it's becoming more and more commonplace. And deepfake technology is scary at the best of times. It being used in the recruitment industry is a real problem. And obviously, we touched on um, candidate fraud early, didn't we? 1 in 4 profiles by 2028 looking to be fake.
Yeah, that's the big one. So, 25% of every single candidate you get, or of candidates that you get, will be completely fake. And that's going to take up a huge amount of time and effort from talent acquisition teams, recruitment people, people protecting the company from
Mm,
what these people are doing as well. And it's a bit scary, that, but I don't think there's anything to do it. That's the world we're going to be living in.
it is. It is. Yeah, there will be things that we can do further down the line to make life easier for everyone, but at the moment, it's scary biscuits. So a little look at our stats from a Q2 perspective. FarmyWeb itself processed just over 10,000 jobs, 10,800 jobs were posted in this Q2 alone. Just over 28,000 applications. 6.5 million job alerts have been set up by candidates. That's people coming in and going, oh, let me know when you've got a regulatory affairs job. We've sent 4.7 million emails. That's not me from a sales perspective. That's to candidates with jobs in those emails dedicated. We've processed 645,000 site visits as well, which is 200,000 higher than Q1. So that shows significant uptake in people looking for a job, as we've discussed, 80% over the next 6 months. And our email newsletters, which go out proactively to candidates, they're boasting a hugely impressive, if I do say so myself, 32% email open rate, which is, 1 in every 3 people that receives it is getting it, having a look, and they're then going on, clicking, applying for jobs. So some really, really decent stats, and it is showing us that things are starting to turn for the better, particularly when it comes to those site visits. So let's sort of sum it up then. Now is a good time to say that if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. We've got a few minutes left, so we can answer anything that you have specifically while I just read the summary quickly. So, green shoots, is this the start of things finally turning around after a really diabolical sort of 18 months, 2 years? Digital literacy, data literacy is key skills that people are demanding at the moment. That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody needs. AI is cutting costs. It is making things cheaper, easier, more accessible, but it is coming at the cost of jobs, particularly around that sort of entry level sphere. It is harder than ever to get into something at the moment, and the competition is so rife. Funding's picked up, compared to a much slower Q1. We've seen a huge pickup, particularly across areas like obesity and medtech. Things are really, really starting to look up positively from a financial perspective. Europe, we're seeing them actively attempt to retain talent from being poached from the US and China, which is great. This incentive that Europe's running is really, really positive, and I think it is going to make a big difference. Europe wants to be the center of life sciences in the world, and this could be the start of something for them if this goes well. MedTech and devices, real gold mine for investors at the moment. 28% up on investment from last year. That is not a small number. That is billions and billions of people of dollars going into this as an industry. Employer branding is the focus for 2025. I feel like we say this quite a lot, but it is really now more important than ever. There are a lot of people doing a lot of things. Not all of it is good. So if you start making those little changes now and you really start selling yourself, you do stand to gain substantially from this. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to touch on, the scary stat of this. 80% of people will be looking for a new job this year. So retention, retention, retention. We've got to think about keeping these people because nobody wants to see 80% of their workforce jump ship at all. Vince, anything to touch on?
No, I mean, all of these things are in place, and I think the key one is thinking about the people that you've actually got in place in the organisation and really working on those the upskilling. Let's make sure people can actually do what we think they can do rather than assume that that's the case. It's really been a lot of people I'm talking to have been really quite surprised by the state of their people. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, should we go over to questions?
We do have a couple of questions. So the first one is just to clarify, actually, are we hearing that the CRO market's starting to pick up in 2026 or 2027? Anecdotally, I'm hearing 2026. They're set for it to be a bigger, better year. What are you hearing?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's not going to be the growth that we're expecting. I don't think it's going to be super strong, but it is. Things are starting to pick up. Things are starting to be released from the big farmers. The information is coming out. There's more work to be done. So towards the end of the year, I think there's a few companies that'll be surprised that they have hit target or they've come really close. A lot of companies had to reforecast. But I can see it picking up, but it's not going to be this like massive influx of work and we're all doing great. I think if that won't come until, that'll be a slow build until around about Q2 and 27. So when I talk to the likes of Deloitte and KPMG and, some of the main business leaders, they're all being quite cautious about what they're thinking. We know it's going to grow. We're seeing it already.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're going to be. So yeah, it's going to be a slow build, but build in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question around layoffs. Have you noticed anything in particular about the vast number of layoffs that have been happening?
Yeah, so again, I do get involved in some of them just to sort of discuss it with some of the talent acquisition managers in different theatres and different areas. I think a lot of people have been forced to get rid of people that they didn't potentially want to or need to,
Yes.
which has been a bit of a shame. And they've now got themselves in a position where they need to recruit those people back in. But I think with the state of the economy and what was going on politically and with wars in the world, there's a very VUCA situation out there at the moment. So a lot of C-suite and board members actually had to make that decision. Let's be cautious. Let's ring fence what we've got. Let's maybe use this as an opportunity to remove some people from the business that we don't necessarily need in the short term,
Yeah.
and then rebuild when the times are good again. So I think the problem with layoffs is it's technology's caused some of it, the economy's caused some of it, and I think with some companies they've just had a really they've had a bit of a shock and had to really rethink about what their focus is and where they're going. So I think we might see a few more
Mm.
before the end of the year as well. But I think again that's slowing down. All of the major ones have been done. I think we'll see a change now. We're starting to see people growing again. But, and there's a but there, we really don't know. Anything could throw all these things out, and we just have to keep doing what we think's best, and hope the people at the top make the right decisions.
Absolutely. It's really interesting, particularly from a talent acquisition point of view. I'm seeing a lot of layoffs still, but this is a time where we're also starting to see things change. So it seems odd. I can't really make sense of it, to be honest, because you're seeing heads of departments in talent acquisition, recruitment be let go, but then you're also seeing huge recruitment drives 2 weeks later. It's just a really uncertain time, and I think that executives in the industry are just having to roll with the punches. They're having to be so reactive because these are 2020 buzzword unprecedented times. We've not really seen anything like this for a long old time. So yeah, be prepared for the unthinkable, and you kind of just have to react as quickly as you can and be as agile as you can be. And sometimes that is meaning that people get left behind in rather unpleasant ways. Biotech layoffs has been something that we've seen
Mm.
for years and years and years on end now. It seems never ending. It's almost amazing that there's anyone still working in biotech, the number of layoffs I've been seeing. But just like everything, it's got to bounce back. It will bounce back. It's multi-billion dollar industry. It's just when, it's just how. But we are starting to see more and more people hiring again, which is really positive. And obviously these mergers and acquisitions will put a few more people out onto the street, but on the other side of the coin, they will then start hiring again. It's just a really strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite weird, but we are seeing growth. I've already got a number of meetings set up. A number of contracts are already coming in for next year.
Yes.
From our side, just the recruitment, which is great. And you know, bear in mind where we were. I think my gut feel is we're going to see continued growth, but it won't be massive growth. It'll be steady. So we shall see.
Sustainable would be good. You know, we've had some real peaks and troughs over the last few years. If we can start ticking up sustainably, that would be awesome. You know,
Mm.
rather than a hiring boom that's going to then become a redundancy boom, it would be nice to see some proper, natural growth.
Yeah, it's all about
Um,
investment, so we'll see.
it is. It
Okay,
is.
any other questions from anybody?
That's everything. That's all of the questions. So it now falls on me to say thank you so much for. Actually, we've just had one more question come in. We will touch on that really quickly. Related to deepfakes and AI
Thanks,
fraud being
Cindy.
perpetrated, what have you seen companies do to get around this? Is there going to be some kind of forensics that companies will have to incorporate to combat this? What's the solution, Vince? What are you seeing?
Well, there is a solution coming, we hope, which is being worked on and monitored by the Cero networking group.
Yes.
Can't say a lot more about that. Um, but there will be some big organizations looking at this. I mean, if you guys deal with companies like HighRight, for example, they're sponsoring
Mm,
some of the technology. If you want some more information on that, I can point you in the right direction. But there is, when we're looking at this, it's got to be addressed. There's got to be some information out there for everybody, and everyone's got to take part, because once we go through a system that works, and I think the technology that's being looked at is blockchain,
hmm
that allows us to then to start monitoring people at all levels. But unfortunately, if we're looking at 25% of all applications in the future within 4 years,
Yeah.
all being fake, that's a huge amount of work. And you've got to find those people, and they're going to get cleverer and cleverer. So Mina, yeah,
Mm.
we'll definitely let you know as soon as there's anything more that we can give to you, and we can go from there.
Okay, I hope that answers the questions, and thank you so much for submitting some questions as well. Love it when that happens. So, thank you everybody for coming along to today's event. And if there's anything else you need at all, please do let us know. We're more than happy to help with anything that we can. So, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you on the next one.